As the title says, I guess, this is a new no-knead bread method. Not mine. This is from King Arthur Flour, and I will put a link below the video so that you don't have to take notes here. You can go to their link. And the best thing that I find about their links is they give you a choice of how you want to do your measurements. You can do it in volume, cups and teaspoons, or you can do it in ounces, or you can do it in grams. So I have selected grams. The first ingredient is we're reading the wrong one. First ingredient is 907 grams of unbleached flour. Of course, they're recommending their own brand name, but mine isn't. Mine came from Costco, I guess. I've zeroed that back so that it isn't weighing the bowl. Don't know if you can read the little screen or not. It has, over the years, it has accumulated stuff in behind it, flour, dust, and whatever. It doesn't show up the very best. What's different about this no-knead method is it is not baked in a Dutch oven like Mr. Leahy's original no-knead bread was done in a Dutch oven, which I have made many times, and the man was very clever who thought it up. This you bake in the oven, a free-form loaf on a stone, pizza stone, or you could do it on a cookie sheet if you don't have a pizza stone, that sort of thing. And also this is refrigerated for several days before you bake it, for up to a week. I think it says you can refrigerate this. So professional bakers call that retarding the dough. They chill it. It aids in the development of the structure. Well, there's exactly 907. I thought I'd end up taking some out and all kinds of things, but I had the other dry ingredients here first. See if I have to zero. No, right back to zero. Salt, 14 grams. And I'm using sea salt, but this is the iodized sea salt from Greece. There we are, 14 grams. I'm putting it over in this mixing bowl because that's how I'm going to mix it all together, is using my mixer. And 14 grams of the quick rising yeast. I keep mine in this container that came from King Arthur Flour, actually, in the freezer. This is several years old, and it still works fine. If you keep it in the freezer, yeast will last a long time. I don't know if it'd make a great deal of difference if you use the ordinary packet of Fleischmann's or not. This comes in like a, I don't know, 500 gram package or so. I think it's the yeast that's used by professional bakers, but you can find it in most superstores now. And there is 14 grams of yeast. And the next one is just tepid or warm water, and that's the last ingredient, 680 grams. I think I've got a little too cool won't hurt anything, but too hot will kill the yeast. So 680 grams. Let's see what we can do here. Oh dear, 1 more gram. That'll never happen, will it? Yep, no, it went 682 grams. Well, gonna have 2 grams more water than they say. I guess that won't hurt anything. Now you would either mix this by hand until it is thoroughly mixed, but you're not kneading it, you're just getting the ingredients all combined, or you do it a minute on the mixer, and I'm going to do the minute on the mixer trick. All set up in the mixer, and now I think it said it's sort of a medium speed. I'll start it low, and we'll throw flour all over everywhere. And I will time that for a minute. And once it's done a minute, we'll come back and show you what happens next. Well, this is what it looks like after a minute. It's a very wet dough. Not as wet, though, as the ordinary no knead, the one that you do in the Dutch oven. It's not that wet, but it's still very tacky. You wouldn't want to try to hand kneading it, I guess. And now it goes into an ungreased large bowl. It says a bowl that will accommodate at least 6 quarts, because it does rise quite a bit. No need to grease the bowl. And as Julia Child would have said, using your impeccably clean hands. That is the most of the work process done right there. It now gets covered and rises at room temperature for 2 hours. So I'll show you what it looks like in 2 hours' time. Here we are, covered and ready to rise at room temperature. I got carried away here, lost track of time. That's about 2 hours and 10 minutes. Not that that would make any great difference, I don't think. I'll peel the plastic back so you can get a better look at it. It certainly has risen. I've been thinking about it, and if you don't have room for a huge bowl in your refrigerator, I happen to have some space in mine, which doesn't happen very often, I don't see any reason why you couldn't cut this recipe in half. And use a smaller bowl for storing it. Anyway, you don't knock it down or anything. You leave it right the way it is, and you refrigerate it. It says for as little a period of time as 2 hours or up to 7 days. Well, according to what they're saying, it will continue to get tangier the longer you keep it in the refrigerator, and at the end of the week, at the end of 7 days or so, it should almost resemble sourdough. This is Monday, and I plan to make a loaf out of it on Wednesday and another one on Friday, just to compare the difference in the taste. It also said that in the refrigerator it will rise and deflate 2 or 3 times on its own, and that's perfectly normal. That's what it's supposed to do. So I will see you on Wednesday when I bake my first loaf out of this. It doesn't tell you how many loaves you should expect to get. It depends entirely, of course, on the size of the loaf that you do, but I'm going to get at least 2 and probably 3 or 4 out of it. It's quite a bit of dough. So we'll try on Wednesday and see what the first loaf looks like. Now, Wednesday morning, and this has been in the refrigerator since Monday. The instructions said that it would rise and fall. Well, it did to a certain extent, I guess. It was risen a bit more than that, and it has deflated a bit, but it still could be knocked down quite a bit from there. Take the plastic off, I guess. Now, preparing a place on the counter to shape the loaf, and it said to dust at least the part of the bread dough that you're going to be trying to get out of there to make it easier to handle. Never done that before. And it also suggested greasing or oiling your hands, so that was a bit of olive oil that I'll put on my hands here. And we'll try to get some of this out of here. This is a bowl scraper, which I'm going to try to get about 1/3 of it out of here. That did cause it to deflate quite a bit. It's not so bad. I'll put this part back in the refrigerator to do its rising again or whatever. And on Friday, I guess I said I would like to try it again. So, just in a lightly floured area here. I'm trying not to knock you over. You're on a tripod next to me here. Just shape it into a loaf of some sort, free form, either this round one it said or log shaped, and then you set it to rise for an hour to 2 hours depending on how warm your room is, and either on parchment paper on a this is a pizza peel that my parchment paper is on, because I'm going to be baking it in the oven on a pizza stone. You could also be putting it on parchment paper and on a cookie sheet if you're going to bake it in the oven on a cookie sheet if you don't have a pizza stone or whatever. So we'll cover it, come back in an hour to 2 hours. It said not to expect it to rise taller, more to spread out some. So we'll check it in an hour or so and see what I think, if it's ready to go in the oven or not. And in the meantime, before it goes in the oven has to be preheated to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, my dough has been resting here for about an hour and 15 minutes under a tea towel. Not a terribly big loaf, and it's doing what they said it would do. Instead of rising up, it's spreading out somewhat. This is a French baker's lame, L-A-M-E, razor blade basically for cutting the top of the loaf. You can do the same thing with any good sharp knife. The reason for it is it helps with what they call oven spring. Just make 2 or 3 slashes wherever you want to make them. It says about a ½ inch deep, so when it gets into the hot oven with the gases coming out of the loaf, and also we'll be putting moisture in the oven. I don't completely destroy my loaf here. This will cause it, I guess it's not going to go sideways in it. This will cause it to deflate somewhat, but that's not a problem. It should spring back in the oven. I think we'll just quit while we're ahead there. I'll meet you over at the oven. Along with the pizza stone that has been heating in the oven, there's a cast iron frying pan down below the stone. That's for the dough to the stone. Hopefully without burning my hands all to pieces. A cup of water into the cast iron pan. What I didn't say is the purpose of putting the water into the cast iron pan is to sort of mimic the professional baker's oven, which is steam injected. The steam helps the bread to get what they call the oven spring from the heat and whatever. I just brought it out of the oven. Mine cooked for 25 minutes. That's a nice brown color anyway. We'll have to let it set for an hour or so until it is ready to cut. And I'm showing you on this side because that looks normal. Now you watch what happens when I turn this thing around. I don't think I've ever had a loaf do that before. It's the bottom of it, not where I cut it. I cut the top and that just expanded like it should, but it blew out at the bottom. So I'm sure it will taste good. It looks good anyway. Not a large loaf. I could put it over on the scales, I guess, and weigh it here and see what it does weigh. Of course, the size is determined by how much of the dough you use to make the loaf. Get the scales going here. Okay, in grams. Okay, it's 591 grams. Which is a pound 5 ounces almost, so it's not a bad sized little loaf, I guess. Anyway, we will slice it when it cools. Well, it's been cooling about an hour, so cut it in two and see what it looks like, I guess. bad. It's got better internal structure than the ones that they show pictured. Still doesn't give any indication as to why that came out that way, but that's the part I'll cut off and eat, see what it's like. The flavor is quite nice, but I think I should have left it a little longer in the oven. That piece that blew out the side anyway is not quite done. So with Friday's loaf, we'll leave it in a little longer. That was 25 minutes at 450. I think I'd go for 30 or 35 minutes. Yeah, it's quite white on the bottom, even though that was the part that was on the pizza stone. So hopefully Friday's loaf will be a little better, but it rose nicely and it bakes nicely and has a nice flavor. So we'll see what Friday's. It's now Friday. That's 5 days since I made the dough, and I've got an idea of what I'm going to do. I guess that's all of the remaining dough, which I'm hoping is about 2/3 of what I used to make the first loaf. I want to divide this and make 2 loaves. One I'm going to bake the same way I did the last one, only for a longer period of time, and I think I'll let it rise for 2 hours too, a longer period of time. The second one I'm going to bake in a Dutch oven, like you would the ordinary no-knead bread. I think that the cup of water in the cast iron pan may not be necessary. It may work just as well in a Dutch oven. So we will see if I'm right or wrong here. I'm usually no good at dividing things in half either. I get one that's much larger than the other one, but we'll see. I can weigh them, I guess, once they're on the parchment paper. That one's larger, I can tell already. Let's see. That's in pounds. This is grams. That one weighs 480, roughly 480 grams. Much lighter. Yeah, this one is about 450. So I'll take just a smidgen off this one and add it to the other one. Now I'm going to let this I'm going to let the first one start to rise here in the kitchen and let it rise for 2 hours, and the second one I'll put in the refrigerator to prevent it from rising until the first one goes in the oven. So I'll come back when the first one is ready to go in the oven. Well, I played around with the 2 loaves on the scales, and now I have 2 loaves that are 460 grams each, or within a gram or 2 of being the same weight anyway. So this one is going to stay out, put a tea towel over it for a couple of hours, and this one's going in the fridge until the first one is in the oven. Loaf number 1 has risen for 2 hours, and I've slashed the top like I did the other one. It's in the oven. Loaf number 2 is out and covered and going to rise for a couple of hours. Loaf number 1 will be in the oven for at least 35 minutes this time, and I'm going to check at the end of 35 minutes to see if I think it should stay any longer. But once it comes out, the Dutch oven has to go in to preheat. So this will give me time to get the Dutch oven preheated and this one to rise for a couple of hours before it goes in the oven. Loaf number 1 is out of the oven and hot. Looking sort of, that's on the cut at least, where it's blew out a bit that time. I don't have the thing that I had happen with the first loaf. Anyway, I'm not going to cut them until I have both loaves cooked and cooled. So the other loaf is still rising, but now I have to rearrange the oven and get my pizza stone down on a lower shelf, remove the cast iron pan, and put the Dutch oven in to heat up. My old cast iron Dutch oven is fully heated, I guess, and the bread has risen for 2 hours. We're ready to go. Made a couple of slashes in the top, and I always put it in the Dutch oven, parchment paper and all, so that's nothing new. Now 30 minutes at 450 degrees, and then I'll take the cover off and another 10 to 15 minutes to brown it. It's been in for 30 minutes. Now to try to remove the cover without burning myself. It's already looking, you couldn't see it, but it's already looking quite brown, so I think probably another 5 minutes or so will do. I think it might be as I surmised. I don't see any great difference in the 2 loaves. One baked in the oven, in the Dutch oven, and one just baked on a pizza stone. They look very similar to me, and you don't have to go through the cast iron pan or whatever and putting a cup of water in there to get steam, because the same thing happens in the Dutch oven. It holds the steam in, the natural steam from the bread. So there we have 2 small loaves, and when they cool I'll slice them both in half and see what they look like. Well, both loaves have cooled so that I can cut them, and they're still in the same order. This is the one that was just baked on the pizza stone, and this is the one that was in the Dutch oven. Something I have noticed is that the one that was baked in the Dutch oven browned better on the bottom. Whether that means anything to anybody or not, but just from looking at them here, I would still say there's no problem doing the loaf either way. So I will cut them in 2 and have a look, see what they look like inside. There's one. There's the other, if you can see them both or not. I guess so. I don't know. Basically the same structure, I guess. This one has some larger holes, and so does this one. I want to taste it though, because it said it would get tangier. I don't have the other one to compare it to, the one that I baked earlier, but the other one had a nice flavor. I don't really get the tanginess, I guess. It's a nice piece of bread, and much better cooked than the first one that I did. I didn't leave in long enough, so this is baked the whole way through. It's a very nice texture to it. So, anyway, thank you very much for watching, and if you're going to give this recipe a try, as I said, the link is down below. It'll take you to King Arthur Flour's recipe, and personally, if I were going to do it again, I would do it in the Dutch oven, just because for me that's easier. I have a Dutch oven already, and I haven't got to use pizza stones and cups of water and cast iron pans and all that stuff, and I don't see any difference in the 2 loaves. So, thank you for watching.